as a matter of fact, physical therapists, as long as we've been around since the 20s or 30s.
Today we got sunlight, we got birds chirping, and we got a couple of old school PTs and a little bit of Nocebo'ing to quash. I hope you enjoy, guys. What's up, guys? Enkiri here. And I decided I wanted to film outside today. You know, we got the birds chirping, we got some nice sunlight. It's a heck of a nice day. So I just wanted to be outside. Hopefully you guys enjoy the sunlight, and hopefully it doesn't disturb the audio quality or the video quality too much. But today, I want to review some advice given by Bob and Brad, the most famous physical therapists on the internet, regarding back pain and a few exercises that they say are inevitably going to hurt your back. Now, the video that I'm reviewing today is kind of old, but somebody linked it to me recently on Instagram. I gave it a good watch, and after doing so, I felt that that particular video needed a counter message to its original message, just from somebody kind of shooting it on out into the ether. Because it doesn't really matter to me how old the content is, right? The message is still out there and it's still being viewed. So I want to provide what I believe to be a better and more modernized counter message in return to that original video. And we're just going to do this one response style. So I'm just going to play Bob and Brad's major assertions in their video regarding the good morning, as well as a few other exercises, primarily hinging style movements. And then I'm going to respond to them bit by bit, piece by piece, just major point by major point. If you find videos like this helpful, please remember to hit the like button before you go, and let's jump right into it. Now, before I get into the response here, I do feel obligated to mention briefly, I did actually promote a Bob and Brad product on this channel late last year. It was a massage gun. I've still got that gun and I still use it, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So I think that today's video is a really good time to illustrate the concept of, I think it is kind of like the idea of severability as it pertains to the advice that fitness figureheads dole out. So while I may thoroughly enjoy that massage gun that Bob and Brad sent me, and I have no problem recommending that product to people who are in the market for a massage gun, I do think that it's important to understand that just because I like a product of theirs doesn't mean that I agree with everything that they say. Even when I made when I put that original product in my video a few months ago, I had people say, oh, but Bob and Brad promote blah, 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 and you don't like blah, blah, blah. That doesn't, just because I promote the product doesn't mean I agree with everything that they say. I like that product. I promoted that product by itself. I wasn't promoting anything else at that exact same time, right? So another example that I'll give you, Greg Doucette, he sent me some free protein powder about a year or two ago, and I have to admit, for all the things I've said about him, the dude knows how to make a damn good protein powder. The peanut butter chocolate, I think is what the flavor was one of the better tasting proteins that I've ever had in my life, point blank. But he also sold turkesterone, and I would never say a single positive thing about turkesterone, right? So we have to remember to be discerning and to tease apart different pieces of advice or different products that people promote and analyze each one on their own merit, right? Rather than trying to place a blanket assertion over an individual based on one or two things that they've said, right? So anyway, with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the video now.
So we're talking about, you know, you're lifting weights, you want to get stronger, maybe your hamstrings to get stronger, your back, a good lift. And boy, you know, we go to the gym and, you know, you see people working there. And as therapists, every now and then you see someone doing a lift. It's like, I wish they wouldn't be doing that lift because it's going to hurt their back eventually. And this happens to be one of them.
There are no eventualities, in my opinion. There are no givens. Low back pain is certainly a common ailment, but just as easily as he can sit here and tell you guys that you're going to hurt your back eventually if you do good mornings, I can sit here and say, you're going to hurt your back eventually. Hard stop. And if you do, it might not be caused by the good mornings that you were doing. It might be caused by a million other variables that you aren't even able to articulate or that you don't even necessarily know are in play. You might even think that the good morning exercise hurt your back when it could be something else that has been causing you back pain altogether. Now, if you're interested in these sorts of topics, the multifaceted and highly nuanced nature of back pain, rather than these simple mechanistic explanations, I do recommend looking into the barbell medicine crew, or just therapists and practitioners who are promoting the biopsychosocial model of pain, is what I should say. So guys like the barbell medicine crew, as well as therapists, PTs such as Caleb Burgess and Jeff Ford. Those are two guys that I follow on Instagram. And again, two guys who I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say, but I agree with a lot of what they say regarding concepts like this. And these guys aren't going to promise you magic healing powers or anything like that, but they are going to shoot it to you straight, and they're going to give you a lot of good info to think about and to work with.
We have it here, and we're going to bend over like this till your back is horizontal, equal to the floor, and back up. True, it works the back muscles, does a good job in the hamstrings.
I'm not gonna lie, Brad's got pretty darn good form on the good morning here. He gets a nice deep hip hinge. He's using minimal knee bend. He's got a relatively neutral spine, and his torso almost reaches parallel with the floor, which is a goal that I try to get a lot of people to be able to accomplish. So he's got solid mobility through the posterior chain as well.
But when we get to this position, it's an issue we're looking at. The next one is bent over rows.
Now, I'm not really sure what the quote-unquote issue is here. They've provided no explanation as to why this position is potentially detrimental or precarious. They've simply asserted that it is dangerous because it's dangerous, which is tautological circular reasoning. Now, there is no mechanistic explanation as to why bending forward is inherently a dangerous thing to do. And if it were, then the same rules would apply to every single hinge that you could do in the gym, such as an RDL or a hyperextension as well. It wouldn't randomly isolate the good morning as being a dangerous variable, being a dangerous exercise. As well, we would also have to apply the same concept to things like bending forward to tie your shoes or whatever other tasks in everyday life that require you to lean down towards the floor, right? But bending forward is not an inherently dangerous thing to do, nor is bending forward under load an inherently dangerous thing to do. The conditions that dictate whether somebody will potentially get hurt or not are primarily going to be loading and tissue conditioning, right? So if you work with proper loads, proper is always relative to yourself, and you adhere to proper volume and recovery protocols, again, this is going to be highly individualistic. While gradually preparing your body to handle this stress by titrating those variables up slowly over time, then the vast majority of the time there aren't going to be any issues. Injuries do occur occasionally, but they're generally due to overuse, accumulated fatigue, working beyond one's means, etc., etc., etc. But the movement pattern itself possesses no inherent danger. And I think we need to stop scaring people out, noceboing people into these sorts of ideas, right? Scaring people out of moving their body in a particular way because we're telling them that moving in that particular way is inherently dangerous. It's not, and this is a fact that we should come to terms with in 2023. And funny enough, the comment section of this exact same video is actually rife with people who said something along the lines of basically, well, I used to have back pain, and then I started doing good mornings, and now I don't have back pain. So that's just something to think about.
You're like this, and you have your barbell. You can do this dumbbells.
Again, you know, they're always trying to keep the arch in the low back.
Right.
We understand that. We understand that's the way that you're trying to do it.
And I understand I don't have very good mechanics with these. I don't do these. I don't like them. And I've got an issue in my back that doesn't allow it. It's called spondylolisthesis. But anyways, this is another one. Any particular exercise when you bend over like this puts a great deal of stress.
Now, I found this part particularly interesting because I too have this exact same condition as Brad, spondylolisthesis. Mine is a grade 2 at L5S1 for those who are interested, but I personally don't have any issues with performing barbell bent over barbell rows. Now, I have stated numerous times in the past that I do believe that these freestanding rowing variations are generally inferior for strength and hypertrophy from a comprehensive perspective as compared to many of their chest-supported counterparts. But again, this assertion is based on the concept of the total lower back stress and fatigue that is present in a comprehensive training program, along with the idea of managing that stress while still allowing for optimal strength and hypertrophy gains across a wide variety of exercises. So I'm not saying that I don't generally program these exercises due to pain or injury concerns or because the positions are inherently dangerous. I'm saying I don't generally program them because they cause a level of lower back fatigue that impacts what I have deemed to be generally more productive movements to a negative extent. But even in spite of that, I do actually still program them sometimes. For example, in a lot of people's programs, I put them in every now and then just for a change of stimulus. In this one guy, I have a client right now, we've cut out the conventional deadlift altogether and we've replaced it with the sumo deadlift as his primary deadlifting variation. And in his case, we're using a barbell row, again, rotated in and out of the program specifically in order to tax the lower back in a way that we aren't necessarily getting from some of our other exercises. So it's all about managing stress while making the best gains. It's not because there is some inherent danger present here in this specific movement pattern as well. And he acknowledges this, but it still kind of needs to be touched on. But his form is actually really, really bad on these barbell rows, and that's using a dowel or something that weighs maybe 5 pounds. But you don't barbell row with the weight hanging way out in front of you like he is doing. You should actually strive to keep the bar hugging your shins as you row up and as you lower it back down. But having the weight hanging way out in front of you does actually place way more stress on the lower back. But now, in this case, that is what I would classify as undue stress. So you're placing more negative stress on that region without gaining any positive stress in return.
Any particular exercise, when you bend over like this, puts a great deal of stress. As a matter of fact, physical therapists, as long as we've been around since the 20s or 30s, when we teach someone how to lift weights, we never teach them to lift.
Yeah, if you're in the work environment, yeah, we tell you never to lift like this.
Right.
Even though you're keeping your back straight, we always tell you to bend the knees and come down like this, keeping your head up.
People don't want their employees getting injured, so they teach them proper mechanics. So why, if you're not supposed to lift weight at work like that because you're going to hurt your back, why would it change in the gym?
Where you're lifting massive weights.
You're doing the exact same body mechanics, except for you're using exercise weights.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So for starters, stress is how we improve, right? In any physical endeavor. There's positive stress, which is called eustress, and there's negative stress, which is called distress. Now, eustress is defined as a positive form of stress having a beneficial effect on health, motivation, performance, and emotional well-being. In the physical realm, eustress, positive stress, only morphs into distress or negative stress when it exceeds our body's capability to handle and recover from the stressor in question. And this is generally going to be due to excessive intensity, i.e. in the gym, how much weight you are lifting. So if you're trying to lift more weight than you should be lifting, as well as excessive volume. Generally, it's going to be some combination of these, so maybe you're lifting a little bit more than you should be, and you're doing it too many times in a row, or for a little bit, maybe one more set, or a few more reps than you should be doing, or you're taking too many of your sets too close in terms of proximity to failure, or it could be due to inadequate recovery from session to session, so that's going to be another programming issue. But your lower back gets stronger by stressing it. So if all you do is avoid stressing your lower back, then all that's going to happen is eventually you're going to have a very weak and deconditioned lower back. And then that weakness and that deconditioning may actually very well place you at risk of acquiring pain or injury in that region in the future. So why then would we want to deliberately avoid strengthening our lower back? It's a little bit of a nonsensical assertion. If I apply that same logic to any other muscle group, anyone is going to tell me that I'm crazy. Well, I want to deliberately avoid strengthening my legs because I'm afraid they're going to get hurt. It doesn't really make much sense, does it? Literally every issue that Bob and Brad have with the positional aspects of the movements they've been talking about are actually programming issues in disguise. People get hurt because of excessive volume or excessive intensity or inadequate recovery, right? And people underestimate how fatigue accumulates over time. But people do not tend to get hurt when they program properly and follow those proper programming protocols consistently. This is not a problem of the movements, it's a problem of the programming. And programming errors will bite you in the ass eventually, regardless of the movement patterns that you're discussing. For example, I have never hurt my back performing a good morning, or a remaining deadlift, or a hyperextension, or literally any other hinging movement that I've ever done. But I have hurt my lower back. I've strained an erector muscle performing a front squat. How does that make any sense? A front squat puts way less stress on the lower back than all those hinges that I just talked about. Now, in terms of the bit about this is how we teach people to lift things at work in a work setting, I actually personally teach a lifting safety course to people who are working in the construction industry, and I very, very deliberately teach these people how to execute a proper hinge, specifically because you can't always lift everything from the position that they are showing here, where you're using a lot of leg engagement to help lift the object. In fact, most solo lifts of real world objects, i.e. not barbells, are impossible to execute this way unless the object is so light that there's no reason for us to be having this conversation in the first place. You have to either lift it with your back. In terms of real world objects, you have to either lift it with your back or learn how to execute a proper hinge, and then you lift it with your back and you get the hammies and glutes more efficiently involved in the process. But the legs can only do so much when you're dealing with a heavy, awkward, anteriorly loaded object. Now, a team lift situation is a different story. During a team lift, you and your partner are able to offset any potential leverage issues, right? If the weight is out in front of me and I try to squat down to pick it up, just like if I try to squat a deadlift off the floor, it doesn't work. But if somebody else was on the other side balancing it out, then it would be okay. So a team lift is a different type of situation where you can actually get more leg involvement. So what that means is that we have to distinguish between these different types of situations. But it is inevitable that in a real world setting that you are going to encounter both of them. And so we should learn how to own them rather than simply trying our best to avoid them.
The third thing, Brad, I was going to show real quick is the kettlebell swing. So they teach you, if you're doing proper form of the kettlebell swing, you actually get the back into a level position right here, and then you're coming up like this.
Right.
And so you're going way down like this, you're hinging the hip, and again, we believe it's better to actually go like this, which would be a normal lift posture.
Sure.
And do the swing this way instead of doing it this way.
Now, I'm not really sure what to say here. His demonstration of how you should not be swinging, but how most people swing, is a really bad demonstration of a swing anyway. It's what I would consider a swing gone wrong. There's way too much knee bend there for starters, and that would really just be an awkward thing to be trying to do with a moderate or heavy kettlebell or swinging implement. And it would lead to this weird sort of arcing pattern that doesn't actually really hit the hamstrings all that well anyway, which is sort of the major point that we're going for here with swings, is learning how to explode and react through the hamstrings by placing them under a massive and rapid stretch prior to an all-out contraction. And then the demo of how you quote-unquote should swing is just kind of weird to me. I'm not going to dissect that whole bit right now because I've actually already done that before. His form here basically reminds me almost to a T of the way that Revival Fitness was advising people to perform their swings a couple years ago, and I dismantled that take pretty thoroughly in this video, so I'm not going to do it again, but if you're interested in that, you can check that one out when you're done here.
Now, if you do it properly, you hip hinge and you arch your back properly, true, that is better for the back, but does it change 300 foot-pounds of force in that spot?
No.
No, not at all. You still have that amount.
And then they end the video with a pretty long discussion of lever arms and how that affects the torque acting on the lower back during they're demonstrating with a good morning type pattern. But again, this is basically irrelevant. If I do good mornings with 100 pounds or I do RDLs with 300 pounds, the torque acting on the lower back is basically going to be the same because the reduced lever arm during the RDL is made up for by greater mechanical advantage, which we then take advantage of by increasing the loading, right? Basically, if you're in the gym, you're going to stress your lower back. But talking about replacing these hinges by using other movements such as squats that by default require less hinging to execute correctly. It's just telling you to remove pieces of the puzzle, vital pieces of the puzzle, because they think that that piece of the puzzle is scary for some reason. These are different movements, right? And they satisfy different aspects of the training program because of that. But telling me to avoid these movement patterns and exercises altogether simply because they place stress on an area that's commonly injured is just telling me to run from a problem that most of us actually experience at some point or another. But why on earth would I run from a problem that I can tackle and overcome by facing head on, right? By running from the problem, you're going to create the worst long-term outcomes. Now, that's your prerogative. That's how you want to live your life, by running from your problems until they become so bad that they explode in your face one day. Then that's your choice. Now, personally, I choose to face my problems head on and nip as many of them in the bud as I can before they become issues that actually affect me in any meaningful sort of way. And one way that we can do that is by working these scary movement patterns. Physics be damned. Actually, physics not be damned. Why would I even say that? Stress leads to adaptation. By stressing the lower back in an appropriate fashion, using loads and volumes that are adequate and correct for you, the lower back becomes stronger, better conditioned, and more resilient over time. By avoiding placing as much stress on your lower back as you possibly can, you may actually eventually end up in a position where bending over to tie your shoes is a 50-50 kind of thing, and the outcome is dubious. Now, I personally choose the former situation here rather than the latter. Anyway, I think that you guys probably get the point by now. That pretty much summarizes my thoughts on the major portions of this video. It had a lot of old school kind of dogma in it, and a lot of circular reasoning was employed as well, at least from where I was sitting. All I really heard was, well, we're PTs and we say this is bad, so this is bad. But that doesn't fly for me. Anyway, I hope you guys found it helpful and informative. And if you know somebody who's been Nocebo'd into back pain by a physical therapist or anybody else, then consider sending them this video, and maybe we can help to take that black pill out of their mouth. Remember to smash the like button before you go. Leave me a friendly comment down below as well. And check out EnkiriEliteFitness.com for online coaching and training programs. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.